The tent poles shook like toothpicks. People screamed. White wedding chairs flew in every direction as hooves thundered through the reception. And in the middle of the chaos, a bride shrieked, "What are those?" while a donkey chewed on her bouquet. Karen spun around, her mouth wide open. Her fancy blue dress flapped in the wind as she ran toward me barefoot now, her heels lost in the mud. "You let them out on purpose," she screeched, pointing at the animals. One donkey head-butted a cake table, launching a 3-tier vanilla tower into a slow-motion fall. It smashed into the grass like a frosted bomb. Gasps echoed under the tent. Karen tripped, face first, into a pile of flower petals. "I'm calling the HOA. You're finished." I crossed my arms. "Good. Tell them how you built a wedding reception in my hayfield." Another donkey brayed loudly behind me, sounding like it agreed. But this moment didn't come out of nowhere. Oh no. This madness started 3 weeks ago, and it all began with a sign, a lawnmower, and one very entitled woman. 3 weeks earlier. I live on the edge of a quiet little neighborhood. My house backs up to a long field where I grow hay, sometimes pumpkins, and yes, where I keep 3 stubborn but lovable donkeys. Beans, Pickle, and Cinnamon. Now, I don't talk to the neighbors much, but I do know Karen. Everyone knows Karen. She's the self-appointed queen of the HOA. Tall hair, sunglasses bigger than her face, and a clipboard like it was glued to her hand. She's the type who finds people for mismatched curtains or grass that's half an inch too long. One morning, I saw her standing near my property line, holding a tape measure and muttering to herself. That's never a good sign. "Can I help you?" I asked from my porch. She didn't even look up. "Just making sure everything is up to standard. You know how important appearances are." I nodded slowly. "My field doesn't fall under HOA rules. It's zoned agricultural." Karen smiled like a shark. "Oh, I know, but it's so close to the community. It really should be managed better. You could mow it more often." I nearly laughed. "I don't mow hayfields. That's what the donkeys are for." She sniffed and scribbled something on her clipboard. That should have been the end of it. But of course it wasn't. The tent appears. It started with tire tracks. I came home one Friday to see deep grooves in the field, slicing through the grass like scars. Then I saw the truck, and the workers, and the giant metal frame they were building near the back corner of my property. I slammed on the brakes and ran toward them. "Hey, what is this?" A guy in a yellow vest looked up. "Reception tent, big wedding in a few days." I blinked. "On whose land?" He scratched his head. The lady who hired us said this was community space. HOA approved. Karen something." I was speechless, fuming. I stormed over to Karen's house. She was trimming her rose bushes like nothing was wrong. "You set up a wedding tent on my property?" I yelled. Karen didn't even flinch. "It's for my niece. She's getting married this weekend. It's just one day, and your field wasn't being used anyway. It's such a lovely open space. Why let it go to waste?" I was stunned. "That's trespassing. You didn't even ask." Karen smirked. "The HOA voted, and we decided it was appropriate for temporary use. It's for love. Don't be selfish." I felt my fists clench. "Karen, you can't just take people's land for your niece's wedding." She waved her hand like I was annoying her. "If it means that much to you, I'll make sure you're invited to the ceremony." My blood boiled. She walked off humming to herself, like she'd just borrowed a cup of sugar not stolen half a field. The donkeys have a plan. The tent went up fast. By the next morning, there were white chairs, fairy lights, and a dance floor right next to my donkey pen. I called the police. They said it was a civil matter. I called a lawyer, but legal action would take weeks. The wedding was in 2 days. Then Beans, my oldest donkey, gave me an idea. He stared at the tent from behind the fence, ears twitching. Pickle leaned on the gate. Cinnamon nibbled on the lock. I knelt beside them. "You guys want to go to a wedding?" They brayed in unison. It wasn't just about the land. It was the principle. Karen had crossed a line, and if no one was going to stop her, maybe some four-legged friends could. I didn't plan destruction. I planned chaos. The eve of the storm. The night before the wedding, I made my move. I placed bales of hay along the far side of the tent, just barely outside the main reception area. A casual viewer might think they were for decoration. I made sure the donkeys had full bellies, plenty of water, and open access to their gate. I rigged it with a simple latchin that a determined snout could nudge open. I went to bed with a mischievous grin. The next day was sunny. Birds chirped. The bride's family fluttered around the tent, pinning flowers and adjusting lights. Guests arrived in shiny cars. Music played softly in the distance. And Karen? She stood proudly by the welcome table, wearing her oversized hat and sipping lemonade like she owned the world. She didn't see me waiting near the donkey pen. I watched. I waited. And the second they brought out the cake and uncorked the champagne, I whispered, "Showtime." I opened the gate. Chaos in a tuxedo. Beans trotted out first, curious. Pickle followed, with Cinnamon bouncing behind. They sniffed the grass, then caught a whiff of something sweet frosting. Maybe. Within seconds, they charged. Guests screamed. A violinist dropped her instrument and ran. The best man dove out of the way. Cinnamon leapt onto the dance floor like a ballerina in reverse. Pickle knocked over a gift table. Bean sweet. Old Bean stood square in front of the bride and sneezed, frosting all over her dress. Karen shrieked, "Get them out! Stop them!" But it was too late. The donkeys were in full party mode. And I was just getting started. The moment the cake hit the ground, all hope for a peaceful wedding vanished. The bride let out a howl that echoed across the entire field. Her veil flapped like a ghost in the breeze as she stomped toward me, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "What is wrong with you?" she screamed. Behind her, Beans chewed on her bouquet like it was gourmet lettuce. Pickle had found the punch bowl and was happily slurping. Cinnamon somehow got tangled in a string of fairy lights and was twirling like it was a game. I stood calm, arms folded, watching chaos bloom like a weed in spring. "You're trespassing," I said flatly. "What happens on my land? Not my problem." The groom, in a tux 2 sizes too big, stumbled after her. "Babe, relax. Maybe the donkeys were an accident." "An accident!" she screeched, spinning on him like a fire-breathing dragon. "This was supposed to be perfect!" She turned back to me, wild-eyed. "I'm calling the police! This is animal harassment! You ruined my wedding!" "Right after you illegally set it up on my property," I replied. Before she could scream again, Karen rushed over, panting, her wide-brimmed hat lopsided and covered in donkey hair. "We'll press charges," You'll be reported to every county board there is. You'll regret this for the rest of your—" Then she slipped on spilled champagne and landed flat on her back. The entire tent went silent for a second. And then Cinnamon walked over and licked her face. 2 days earlier. Let's rewind. 2 days before the wedding, I tried everything I could to stop this disaster from happening. First, I printed out satellite images of the property lines. I hand-delivered copies to Karen, taped one to the tent, and even emailed her niece's wedding planner. No one cared. Then I posted bright yellow, no trespassing signs every 20 feet along the fence. They mysteriously disappeared overnight. Guess who I found in my security footage at 2:14 a.m. with wire cutters? Yep, Karen, wearing a hoodie like a teenage ninja. I filed a police report, but the officer who came out scratched his head and mumbled, "Well, if it's just a wedding, maybe try to be neighborly." Neighborly. They were treating my field like a public park, and I was the grumpy old man trying to ruin their fun. So I went full grumpy, and I started planning. The wedding planner and the nervous DJ. The morning of the wedding was weirdly calm. Birds chirped. The tent looked professionally decorated. Pink and white ribbons fluttered in the breeze. A little wooden sign read, "Happily ever after begins here." I stood on my porch, sipping coffee. A man in a headset nervously tapped buttons on a soundboard, the DJ. He looked up at me and offered a half smile. I waved. "Hope you brought waterproof speakers." He looked confused. "Huh?" I smiled. "Never mind." A few hours later, the guests started arriving. I saw luxury SUVs and fancy dresses and a man with a drone camera. The wedding planner, a tall, serious woman in black, walked the perimeter with a clipboard and a Bluetooth earpiece. She eyed the donkeys and narrowed her eyes. "Are those supposed to be there?" she asked, pointing. "They live here," I replied. "Unlike you." She sniffed like I'd insulted her shoes. "They better not cause problems." I just smiled. "They're very sociable." The whisper before the charge. I waited until the vows began. The guests were seated. The bride and groom held hands under the flower arch. The air was still, quiet. And that's when I opened the gate. The donkeys trotted into view like they were part of the procession. Some people gasped. A few kids clapped. One older lady said, "Oh, how cute. Are they the ring bearers?" Then Cinnamon spotted the snack table, and all heck broke loose. Pickle galloped through the rows of chairs, knocking over a groomsman. Bean stopped in front of the officiant and pooped right on the carpet. The bride screamed like she'd been stabbed. And from my porch, I toasted with lemonade. Should have picked a different venue. Damage control turns. Dangerous. Back at the wrecked reception, Karen scrambled to regain control. She yanked a microphone out of the DJ's hand and shouted, "Everyone remain calm. We're experiencing a minor livestock interruption." The crowd didn't listen. One woman climbed onto a folding chair to avoid Pickle. Someone shouted, "Is that cake safe to eat if a donkey licked it?" Another guest ran to their car, screaming about allergies. Karen stomped toward me, fists clenched. "You don't know who you're messing with," she shouted. "This wedding cost $35,000. I shrugged. "Then maybe you should have rented a venue instead of stealing my backyard." Her face turned the color of a tomato. "I am the HOA president," she yelled. "I can fine you for this. I can get your animals banned. You'll be kicked out of this community. I laughed. Karen, I don't even live in your community. My house is grandfathered in. Your rules mean squat. She went silent. For a moment. Then her eyes narrowed. And she said something I didn't expect. I'm taking you to court. I raised an eyebrow. For what? Letting my donkeys walk on my own land? No, she hissed. For ruining my niece's wedding and emotionally traumatizing everyone here. Behind her, the bride was sobbing into her dress, which now had hoofprints on it. Better call your lawyer, Karen growled, because we're going to destroy you. The silent witness. What Karen didn't know was that I had something she didn't. Cameras. 4 of them, hidden around the field, the pen, and the property lines. And all of them had recorded everything: the tent setup, the trespassing, the sign theft, and even Karen at 2 a.m. with bolt cutters. But I didn't tell her that. Not yet. No, I had a better plan. As she turned and stomped back toward the tent, I whistled for the donkeys. They followed me back home, tails wagging, completely unbothered by the destruction they'd just caused. I leaned against the fence and looked over at the broken tent, the screaming guests, and Karen yelling into her phone. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because tomorrow, I was going to the HOA board meeting. And I was bringing everything. The meeting room smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. Karen sat at the front of the room, arms crossed like a queen on her throne. Her pearls gleamed under the flickering lights. Next to her were 3 other HOA board members, all wearing matching navy blue blazers and faces stuck in permanent frowns. A big sign on the wall read, "Oh, monthly meeting. Residents welcome. Public comments limited to 3 minutes." I took a seat in the back. The chairs were old and squeaky, the kind that hurt your back on purpose. Around me sat a handful of other homeowners, most of them elderly, curious, or bored. Some whispered about the wedding incident. One lady with a knitting bag whispered, "That's him, the guy with the donkeys." I smiled politely. Karen banged her little gavel. "Let's begin," she said in her usual sharp, icy tone. First, community garden rules. Second, tree trimming fees. Third, an unfortunate disruption that occurred on the Edgewater property this past weekend during a private event. Everyone looked my way. Karen cleared her throat dramatically. There was an act of aggression involving multiple donkeys that caused damage to personal property and emotional trauma to guests. I raised my hand. "Mr. Fields, you'll have your 3 minutes during public comment," Karen snapped. I didn't lower my hand. I stood instead, calm, collected. "I'll keep it short," I said. "You trespassed. I have proof. You destroyed private property. I have proof. You ripped down legal signs and cut a fence at 2 in the morning. I have video. You ignored 4 warnings. You refused to respond to emails. You threatened me, and then your niece held an illegal wedding on my land." Gasps. A board member choked on her coffee. The guy next to her adjusted his glasses and said, "Wait, you were the one who released the donkeys?" I nodded. Karen tried to interrupt. This is outrageous. This man is dangerous. He ruined a family celebration." I took out a flash drive. Would the board like to see the security footage? The room went still. One of the board members, the oldest, a man named Mr. Drummond, held out his hand. "Please, let's see it." Karen's face went pale. "Wait, that's private footage. He could have edited it." I didn't say a word, just plugged it in. The footage that changed everything. The projector clicked on. First, it showed Karen cutting the fence at 2:14 a.m. wearing all black. Then, it cut to the tent being raised on my field while I stood on my porch taking pictures. Next, it showed the wedding planner tearing down the no trespassing signs. Then the bride yelling at me. Then Karen threatening me. Then the donkeys calmly trotting around their own field. By the time the video ended, the room was silent. Mr. Drummond took off his glasses slowly. "Karen," he said, "is this true?" Karen tried to laugh. "Oh, come on. This is clearly edited. He's trying to make me look bad." "He didn't have to try," someone whispered from the back. A younger woman near the door raised her hand. "I actually emailed the HOA board about this. Twice. I saw the wedding tent going up and told you it was on the neighbor's land." Karen turned red. "Two didn't see those emails." Another board member spoke up. "I did." Then, the board started arguing right in front of everyone. Karen loses her cool. Karen stood up, eyes wide. "He's manipulating you. This man has been a problem ever since he moved in. He doesn't follow community standards. He keeps farm animals in a residential area, and he blasts country music from his porch." I smiled. "Still legal. My land is zoned for agricultural use. Again, grandfathered in." Karen stomped her foot like a child. "You're just a troublemaker. You're ruining this neighborhood." Then a voice from the back chimed in. "No, Karen, you are." Everyone turned to see a tall woman with gray hair and a serious face. It was Miss Charlotte, one of the original founders of the neighborhood. "I remember when this was all open land," she said. "That field he owns, it's his, fair and square. You just thought you could get away with stealing it because you had power, but you forgot one thing." She turned to me. "You messed with the wrong neighbor." A twist no one expected. Right then, one of the board members whispered something to Mr. Drummond. He nodded solemnly and tapped the mic. "Due to the evidence presented, and after reviewing the HOA charter, we are temporarily suspending Karen as president, pending a formal investigation." The room exploded with murmurs. "What? No!" Karen shouted. "You can't do that. I am this neighborhood." "You were," Mr. Drummond replied. "But now you're under review." Karen stormed out of the room, knocking over a water cooler on her way. It splashed everywhere, and the knitting lady whispered, "She's gone full meltdown." I calmly walked out with the flash drive in my pocket and a grin on my face. But just as I stepped outside, someone stopped me. A mysterious warning. It was the wedding planner. She looked nervous, kept checking over her shoulder. "I didn't mean for it to get so out of hand," she said. "Karen promised she had permission. Said it was handled. I should have checked." "It's too late now," I said. "Damage is done." She nodded, then lowered her voice. "There's something else. Karen. She's not finished. She told someone that if she can't win with the board, she'll take care of you another way." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of way?" "I don't know, but I saw her talking to a guy in a gray truck yesterday. Big guy. She gave him photos of your property. Something's up." And just like that, the power shift became a new threat. Karen wasn't done. She was planning something darker. And now, it was my turn to prepare. Because if she wanted war, I was ready. After Karen is suspended as HOA president, things seem calm, but it doesn't last. The wedding planner warns that Karen has another plan. A mysterious man in a gray truck has been seen near the narrator's property, and Karen gave him photos. Suspicious activity begins. Tire marks near the back fence, motion sensors going off at night, and feed bags for the donkeys disappearing. The narrator installs trail cams and upgrades the fencing, sensing an ambush coming. One night, he catches someone on camera trying to tamper with the Getates the man in the gray truck. But the trap was already set. The camera snaps a clear photo of his face, and a loud alarm drives him off. The next day, police are called. Turns out, the man in the gray truck has a record and he's Karen's cousin. The police begin investigating Karen for conspiracy and trespassing. But Karen still denies everything and starts rallying neighbors to her side, spreading lies about the narrator and the donkeys being dangerous. Just when things start to cool down, the narrator wakes up to find the donkey shelter completely slashed, open fencing destroyed, hay scattered, and hoof prints leading down the road. And the donkeys? Gone.